Welcome back to our RHC Shorts series. This is our fourth video in our series where we're going through key concepts related to rural health clinics in shorter form presentations. Today we're talking about preparing documents for cost report preparation, and we're going to go ahead and jump in because there's a lot to get to. So as always, we want to talk a little bit about why this is important. As we know, the cost report is vital to continued payments. If it doesn't come in at all, then your payments are going to get cut off. If it's late, your payments may still get cut off, and you're going to go to the back of the line for getting that issue resolved. So we want to make sure that the cost report gets out on time. Ultimately, clinic management is the one certifying the accuracy of the report. And so, how do you ensure that accuracy? You do that by providing clear and accurate documentation to your preparer on the front end. When you do this, you're ensuring a clear audit trail for if the Medicare administrative contractor has any questions on the report. You've got clear documentation to back up everything that's there. And also, as I mentioned from time to time, cost reports are only getting more complicated. Every year, the rate cap goes up, and more clinics are operating under the cap. And when you're operating under the cap, every penny and every visit is going to make a difference on the cost per visit calculation. So what we're going to try to do today is just do a walkthrough of our request list here at Healthcare Business Specialists. If you use us, then you may have received something like this already. Um, if you use a different preparer, they're still going to be asking you for similar items. It just may look a little bit different. This is actually our electronic request list, which is something we put together this year to hopefully be a little bit easier for our clients instead of having to maybe write stuff down and then scan it back in, and then it makes it easier for us to operate with as well. So we're going to do a basic walkthrough of the things that we ask for and some of the more detailed things that we ask for. And so we'll start at the top. We need at least one of the following items right here. This is our expense listing for worksheet A of the cost report. If you watched our video on calculating the cost per visit, then we talk about worksheet A. So we need either a trial balance, a financial statement from accounting or QuickBooks. This would be an income statement, what we would be looking for, or a federal tax return for the clinic. This is only applicable if the clinic's cost reporting period matches the calendar year, meaning you've got a 12/31 year end. And if you're one of the reports that's due in 2 months here on May 31st, then your reporting period will match your calendar year, and you can use a federal tax return. You can send that to us, and we can use that for your expense listing. So we need one of those three items. Number two, we need a CPT report, which matches the same cost report period, and that needs to be broken down by provider so that we can accurately count all of the relevant encounters for the period. That's going to go into worksheet B on the cost report. Number three that we've got listed here, we need either a payroll summary for the appropriate period or a complete set of W-2s. Now, in both cases, we ask our clients to indicate the job title for the employee as well as the hours worked through the year. And if there would be any variance from that total versus what's on the expense listing, an explanation of that as well. We ask for the job title and hours to make sure that we have everyone's salaries properly classified on the report. And then the hours are used for a few different calculations in the report itself. Number four is the PSNR report for the period. Now, this can be provided either as the PSNR report itself or as access to the PSNR through the IDM system. And if you're unsure whether or not your preparer has that access, check in with them to verify that. Now, we've got a few items here, 5, 6, and 7, which reference specific tabs, and we're going to get into those tabs here in just a little bit, and I'll show you what's on those. But generally, number 5 is basic information about the clinic. Number 6 is provider FTE. That's information about provider hours. And then some basic information about the clinic's malpractice policy for number 7 there. Number 8 on our request list is also about worked hours. If you provided all of the hours information on your W-2s or payroll summary, And this isn't totally necessary to put in number 8, but it is a total that we end up calculating. So we put it here as an option, and that's just the total hours worked by all nursing staff and medical assistants. For number 9, we ask for any Medicare correspondence that was sent to the clinic. This would be any correspondence sent from your Medicare administrative contractor or your MAC. This is going to include demand letters, notices of program reimbursement, any kind of adjustment reports, and then really just kind of any correspondence sent from the MAC. You can send that to us, and we'll go through it and make sure that we're getting the right information. This is super important because a lot of times this is going to include information that's going to directly impact the reimbursement calculation on the report, which is going to directly impact the settlement that's getting paid out or what the report says you have to pay back in. And so if that's incorrect on this end because we don't have um, the proper information, then what's going to happen is when the MAC reviews it, they're going to see that their information is different from what's on the report. And it usually ends up in a bigger surprise payment down the line when they review it. So we want to make sure that we have all of that on the front end. Number 10 is a visit count sorted by payer mix or an estimated payer mix percentage broken down into CHIP, Medicare, Medicaid, and other because we have to provide that on Form S3 on the cost report. It's just informational. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual reimbursement calculation, but it's still important. It still needs to be accurate. So if you can provide an estimated payer mix percentage there, that's what's most helpful to us. Number 11 on our list is information about flu, pneumococcal, and COVID vaccines. We have a summary tab that we'll look at in just a little bit, but we do need the supporting information there, which is going to be Medicare logs that include patient names, Medicare numbers, and dates of service. We need some kind of total count for all non-Medicare shots given that year, or just all shots overall, and then invoices supporting the purchase of any of those flu, pneumococcal, or COVID vaccines throughout the year. And we have a summary tab where some of this information can go, but we still need the Medicare logs and the supporting invoices as well. Number 12 references a specific informational tab that we've got about outside services or professional services. And so we'll look at that in just a minute. Number 13, if you do intend to claim Medicare bad debt, then you obviously need to provide the appropriately prepared Medicare bad debt log in Excel format. And then we also like to know if you don't intend to claim any bad debts. And that way we know what to be looking for on our end. Number 14, if the clinic is involved in any related party transactions, then we need details about that. If you're not sure if your clinic's involved in any of those kinds of transactions, talk to your preparer and they can kind of help you determine whether they need any information about that. The most common type of related party transaction that we see is a situation where the owner of the clinic also owns the building the clinic is operating in, and then the clinic is paying rent to the owner. If you're in a situation like that, then that is a related party transaction, and we'll need some information about that. And that can be a case by case basis. So definitely talk to your preparer about what specific information they need from you about that. Number 15 is involved depreciation. If you have any depreciation on your expense listing back from request item 1, then we need the depreciation schedule that matches that amount. Because what we have to do is we have to go through and then adjust depreciation to Medicare regulations. And those regulations are different from the IRS regulations, and they're different from other financial reporting regulations. So in order to do that, we need the information we need the schedule for how that amount was calculated. And then to kind of finish off the request list here, 16 and 17 are a couple of other informational tabs that we'll look at in just a second. Number 18 is information about who will sign the report. So we need the name, title, and email of whoever's going to be responsible for approving and signing the report, because that information has to go on the report on our end. And then briefly here, I just want to mention this note that we have um, about electronic filing. It is highly preferred at this point as the methodology for filing your report. Um, it's and also the use of the IDM system in general is highly preferred as far as getting access to your PSNRs. So if you're not already set up in the IDM system, definitely go ahead and do that. It can be kind of a pain uh, to get set up, especially if you're trying to do it on short notice. If you're already in the IDM system and you know who your security official is, then you're pretty much in good shape. But if you don't, then definitely get on that. If you are in the system and you do know who your security official is, then make sure your preparer is set up as both a PSNR user and a cost report e-filer, uh, and has those two roles. That way, um, it'll make the preparation of the cost report easier as far as getting access to the PSNR. And then once you've seen, approved, sign the report, um, it'll make it easier to get it filed and get it out the door. So that's the base request list. Throughout that, I mentioned a few different times that there were some specific tabs related to some specific items. So we're going to go through what some of those look like. But that is the basic overall request list. So this is the clinic information tab I mentioned. It's very basic information: clinic name, provider number, the fiscal year end that we're preparing for, location of the clinic, um, how it's owned. If this is not your first year using your preparer for the year, then they probably already have a lot of this information. But we send it out with our request list every year to make sure that our information is still up to date and accurate. So definitely fill it out. Definitely provide this information because it helps make sure everything still lines up the right way. This is our provider FTE tab. We use this to determine how much time providers are spending on RHC patients. And we need this because there are productivity standards that are based on a full-time work schedule for providers. But if your providers are spending a significant portion of their time on administrative duties or on anything else that's not related to seeing RHC patients, then that time won't be counted against them when determining if your clinic is hitting productivity standards. So we need that information on this tab uh, to make sure we know how the time is being used and we can put it into the report accordingly. This is the malpractice information tab that I mentioned a little bit earlier. It's statistical information for CMS. All we need is kind of the general information about the malpractice policy, whether or not your clinic has it, what type of policy it is, and then how much cost falls into those three categories that are listed there. And generally, that's just malpractice premiums. And then on our request list, we do ask what line that expense falls in on your expense listing, just to help us make sure that we've got everything classified appropriately. But overall, this is very statistical information. It doesn't actually impact your cost per visit calculation. It's just information that still has to be submitted and it still needs to be accurate. This is what our vaccine information tab looks like. This is the summary of the information that we need to do our calculations to go into the cost report software. Those top three lines will be directly keyed into our software. That last line where we ask for minutes per shot, we use that for a time calculation where we determine the staff time that's used for giving vaccines, and then that's going to allocate a portion of those staff costs to vaccine administration. So you can just provide an average there, then that is what's most helpful. This is the outside services information tab that I mentioned a little bit ago. Um, this is an informational request that we added this year because it was something that we noticed was a common follow-up that we were having to ask for from clients after they submitted initial information. So we just wanted to get a little bit ahead of that this year um, with this table. So you can input at the top the total amount of expense spent on outside services, and then break down how much of that is related to the common categories that we've kind of laid out here. And then there's that line 7, which says, if there's anything that's not related to the above, you can put it here and then just give us a detail of how that breakdown looks and what those services were. And then that little cell at the bottom just kind of ensures that everything ties out and lines up. This is our laboratory information worksheet. The primary use we have for this is if you're commonly running a bunch of different tests that all take different amounts of staff time to complete, or if different staff are responsible for different tests and are compensated at different rates. In that case, then we like to break it down by which lab test is being done, and then how long it takes to do that test, and then how much the compensation is for the staff doing those tests. Now, if everything ends up running about the same, then instead of giving us this breakout, we can just look through your CPT report at the lab codes, and then we will do this calculation for all of them together. So like if it takes about the same amount of time to do most of the tests you're running, and the same staff are being paid the same rate to do all of those tests, then we'll just take those lab codes and plug them into basically one of these columns in order to get the same information. So that kind of depends on your situation. This is the owner entity tab. This is only required if your clinic is owned by an entity that has multiple RHCs. So there's some basic information that we have to have that's going to go in the report if you're in that situation. So that kind of covers the whole thing. As far as our request list goes, like I said, if you're using a different firm to prepare your cost report or you're preparing it in-house, a lot of the information that's going to be asked for is going to be the same. It just may look a little bit different. But definitely, this is your reminder that if you haven't started working on it, go ahead and do it now. As I'm recording this, it is the end of March, and these are due on May 31st. So get this information into your cost report preparers. Help them out by getting it to them as complete as it can be, as early as you can get it in, and it'll make it easier on everyone in the long run. If you haven't already, check out the RHC Information Exchange Facebook group and check out our website at ruralhealthclinic.com. And as always, if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. Thanks for watching.